Welcome back. I have another video for you about riddles, and I'm going to talk about 5 riddles that maybe they're good for you to be aware of. And I want to apologize in advance. I want to be above reproach when I'm creating these videos. I try to create pure family-friendly content and the like. There is one riddle or example that I'm going to use here that is one that is kind of a well-known one. And I'll just give you a preface before I get to it that when you first hear it, you might think that it's some kind of inappropriate riddle. And sometimes that is actually a device that's used in historic riddle design as I'm coming across it in different cultures, even these ones that go back, hundreds of years, in like the Book of Exeter that I've made reference to in other places. And sometimes the riddle sounds like it's describing something inappropriate, but the actual answer is something that's really benign and that's simple, and it's not inappropriate at all. So just give you a little bit of a warning that at least one of the riddles sort of fits in that category, and we'll kind of talk through that a little bit as we go along. So here are 5 riddles that I think might be worth you just being aware of if you're interested in exploring the world of riddles historically and across cultures, and how we might be able to take some lessons from this to design and use our own riddles for clearer thinking, better decision making, better problem solving, and better metaphorical and literal treasure hunting. So let's go ahead and dive into this. The first one is a really, really famous one. This is from the Sphinx. You've heard this before, most definitely. But what walks on 4 legs in the morning, 2 at noon, and 3 in the evening? Now, you've heard this riddle at some point in your life, and so maybe you're already giving the answer. You know this one. It walks on 4 legs in the morning, 2 at noon, and 3 in the evening. And the answer is a person, right? Crawling as a baby on 4, and then walking as an adult, and then using a cane in old age, which is the 3. Now, one of the reasons I think this is a fascinating riddle, if you're interested in the design of riddles and the use of riddles in different forms, is that it's a really beautiful riddle. I mean, it's one that's provocative. It gets you thinking. It gets you wondering. It's sort of introducing a truth, but at a slant or an angle. And so what it's doing, the primary kind of device that tricks you a little bit or gets you off track, is that it uses the metaphor of a day, morning, noon, and evening, to represent a lifetime, right? So it's taking this concept of a lifetime, and everything else is really straightforward. Right? If I had said this riddle and I said, what walks on 4 legs when it's young, on 2 legs in its adulthood, and on 3 legs in its old age, you would know immediately, oh wait, that's a person. That's how it works, 4, 2, and 3. And yet, by changing that one piece in the design, I've come up with a really intriguing, thought-provoking riddle that's very satisfying when you hear the answer, because it makes sense to you. It gives you that aha moment, that sense of satisfaction that comes from a solution to a great riddle. So that one is pretty neat. Is a pretty neat one, and so that one I think is a good one just to explore. The second one is a classic, famous biblical riddle from the book of Judges, where we have Samson. He kills a lion, and then later he finds a bee and honey in its body, and he makes a riddle out of it, and he uses it to challenge his wedding guests, right? Now this, I'll come back and make some comments about this after I give you the riddle, but here is the riddle, and the riddle is, out of the eater came something to eat, out of the strong something sweet. And of course, it's what I just described. It's honey from a lion's carcass. Now, that's a really hard one, because it's an image or a picture that, how many people would have seen that or experienced that? That's a really, really difficult riddle. If I were in the room when Samson gave this, I'm pretty confident I would not have gotten it. And it almost requires that you had been there, or that you'd seen something like that, to kind of trigger your thoughts or your imagination. Or I guess if you pondered for a while and you got creative and you got a lot of guesses, you could figure it out. But that's one that almost requires a kind of inside scoop. And I mention that because sometimes riddles can be the keepers of secrets or hidden knowledge, and it requires you to get to know a person and their experience in order to be able to solve the riddle. that is a really powerful lesson for the idea of riddle design and modern treasure hunt design and modern designs of puzzles and things like that. It's a reminder that understanding the mind and the experience of the designer can be a really powerful tool for figuring things out. And that's one of the reasons why I like that one a lot, and I put it in my kind of top 5 riddles to be aware of. Third one, and this one actually comes from The Hobbit, and I've made reference to this in a different video. It's a riddle duel between the character Bilbo Baggins and this creature Gollum. And it goes like this. The thing all things devours, birds, beasts, trees, flowers. And the answer is time. So what I like about this one is, first of all, it's actually in a book that I loved as a kid when I was younger, actually as a young adult more than as a kid, and I really find Tolkien's writing to be intriguing, the way he uses language and he weaves in poetry, and he was a linguist by training, and he even wrote songs and languages to kind of underpin the different groups that he wrote about, like an elven language and so forth. And in this one, though, the use of the riddle is really kind of cool because he takes the thing that all things devours, birds, beasts, trees, and flowers. So he's identifying all these things that they get devoured, and he's using the metaphor of devour for that they decay, right? That they age, and eventually they kind of decay away. And so he uses the metaphor of decay or being devoured for time, and that's what makes it kind of a slant and makes it a little bit confusing. And of course, in this context, there was actually a deadly negotiation that's going on. But here, I just find that it's a great example of using metaphor in a really odd or unusual way to kind of trick the person, but it can still be really satisfying. Once you hear the solution or you figure out the solution, it gives you what a good riddle is intended to give, which is that aha moment, that kind of feeling of conclusion. All right, let me do another one here. This is from an Anglo-Saxon, an old riddle. It's from the book of Exeter, the Exeter book. I just got another copy. I've gotten a couple versions of it, and I've been reading through different versions. And this is the one that I warned you about, that if you hear it at first, you could think that it was almost describing something inappropriate, and it is not. It is not describing something inappropriate. Otherwise, I wouldn't use it in my G-rated YouTube channel. But I will say that it sounds that way, and then I'll make a comment about it after I give it to you. The riddle is this: I satisfy women, swell in size, and lie in their bed. And so, people could be imagining things that are pretty risque here, but the answer is bread dough. And this is an example of a riddle design that I find really intriguing, though. Now, I mean, it has this kind of questionable theme that could lead some people down a route that you don't want to go, or they don't want to go. But that's one of the ways that a riddle can sometimes work, is that it uses a really strong metaphor that leads you, that creates a very strong, powerful image in one direction that might even be almost embarrassing to kind of name it or name what you're thinking or something like that. But in fact, it has a much simpler, benign, wholesome kind of answer in the end. And that is part of how riddles are used when you look around different cultures. I've seen several examples of this, not necessarily the one that has almost seems like this sexual innuendo in this particular case, but it's one that is, but it might be a metaphor for something that just might feel a little bit more embarrassing or private or something you wouldn't usually talk about. So it hints and it tries to sort of lead you to think in one direction, and then again, at the end, it's really satisfying in that the riddle really does describe what you are talking about here, bread dough. And then I'll do another one here that is from Puccini's opera, And this is one that I'm still kind of I'm not someone who actually gets into opera a great deal, but there's a Princess Turnado who gives each suitor 3 riddles, and if they fail, they die. So one steps forward and he gets all of them right, and these riddles are kind of a test of insight, and we see this in the use of riddles in story and other things like that. But here's the riddle that I pulled out that I think we can kind of explore if we want to look at beautiful riddle design and learn from it. It's, what is born each night and dies each dawn? What is born each night and dies each dawn? And the answer is hope. So this is one that is much more abstract than what we find with most riddles. That's what makes it really hard. The vast majority of riddles that I've found when I look around and I've looked at different cultures and times, the ones that I've been reading, most of them lead to something really concrete, like bread dough, or, I mean, time is more abstract, but even that feels a bit more concrete. But when you get into a concept like hope, that one is a lot more abstract, and it makes the riddle harder. So in fact, you may still be in your mind trying to figure out, how does this riddle actually describe hope? What does it mean when it says, what is born each night and dies each dawn? And how does that describe hope? So in some ways, you might argue that it's a sign of a not so great riddle because it doesn't have that satisfying aha moment right away. But instead, it leaves you kind of grappling with it, trying to figure out, well, how does that riddle describe that word? How does that work? And it causes you to think about it a bit more, and along the way, it leads you into kind of deeper thinking. It leads you into kind of pondering or meditating upon it in a way, and trying to dig a bit deeper. And that can be a role of a riddle also. And that's true in one of my other videos. I talk about the use of riddles in the courtroom and judgments and so forth. And in some cultures, riddles are given where everyone kind of knows the answer up front, but the riddle is simply a call or an invitation for others to be reminded of a value or a virtue that's important to that culture or that community or that group. This is a different kind of riddle. And the riddle here, what's born each night and dies each dawn, and the answer is hope. While it's in the context of an opera and it's a puzzle about, the suitor having to answer the riddles in order to win the prize and so forth, it's intriguing because in some ways it doesn't quite fit that. It's a riddle that's calling you to think deeply, to go beyond just the simple and the abstract. So there you have it. There are 5 riddles that I think are worth studying and exploring because they can teach us a lot about riddle design and about their different uses. And I do think that we have maybe shied away from the use of riddles in our culture, in the American culture where I live today. I just don't see riddles used quite as much. And I would love to see them come back. And as we're seeing kind of the resurgence of gameplay and treasure hunts and escape rooms and people trying to find these fun and interesting experiences that sharpen your mind and build community and so forth, the role of a riddle can be really useful. Maybe if you're one of those people that wants to design some, or you just want to get better at solving riddles, this is an invitation to do so. I hope you find this useful. I look forward to your comments.